again after all this. Daf Mem Gimel. And we're on Daf Mem Gimel Amud Bet. Tonight's learning will be incredibly confusing. I must tell you, I always try to figure out like what's the Seder of the Gemara, and the Gemara Seder we always talk about, it's not linear. It's three-dimensional, more than three-dimensional, multi-dimensional. And the order of what you see in Shas oftentimes presupposes that you know other parts of Shas, right? So pick any sugya, like it presupposes you know certain things, whether because you practice them, meaning you know these as mitzvahs that you do, mitzvot masiot, whether it's because it's related to some general knowledge you're supposed to have. It's in so many mishnayot, that's exactly how it plays out. I'm sure you realize, right? Me'ematai koren kriyat shema shel arvit, starts talking about truma and kohanim. Like, I don't know, what's truma, what's kohanim, right? It didn't start really at the beginning. It presupposes you have other layers of knowledge, etc. So we all know that in addition to the Daled Minim, we know that on Hoshana Rabbah in our shuls, we take in hand a bundle of Aravot. And those Aravot come with us for a period of time. They're not going to circulate with us with the Daled Minim around the Shulchan, but at our place, at a certain point, the Gabbai gives the magic clap. Everybody puts down the Daled Minim. Now we pick up, right? It's 2, it's 3, it's 4, it's some combination. It's a secret that only Gabbayim know how the combination goes. And they pick up the Arava, and we hold a bundle of stems of Aravot for the duration of the tefillah. We know this. The Gemara, however, is talking about Arava as an aspect of mitzvah that is related to all the days of Sukkot in the Beit HaMikdash. And let's say, perhaps at a certain moment, Jewish history, 0 days outside of the Beit HaMikdash, only in the Beit HaMikdash. The Gemara also itself, we won't get there tonight, I don't think, it's a Mem Daled, is going to debate what exactly in the Mikdash was the mitzvah of Arava. It's not clear what the mitzvah of Arava is. There are going to be two competing opinions. And you ask yourself, like, how do they not know what it is, right? The mitzvah of Arava, we already learned previously several times that in our learning over the years. We learned Dape Gemara, most recently on Daf Lamed Daled. There's certain things that are Allah Moshe Misinai. One of them is Arava. The Torah does not have a direct source, or so that Memra claims, in the Torah for the mitzvah of Arava. Yet, Halach Moshe Misinai bumps it up and makes it a mitzvah, essentially deoraita. We'll see there's a machloket there. There's going to be another opinion that says, no, it's actually darshan from the words in the mitzvah of Lulav. This the words, the way they're phrased, imply that there is this mitzvah. So the Gemara presupposes that we have sort of all these pieces in place, even though the Gemara itself later is going to question these things. I guess it's kind of like what we saw a couple of shiurim ago, where we took as a given in our learning, Amem Gimel Amud Aleph, we had taken as a given that we know that we take the Daled Minim during the day, and that we sit in the Sukka by day and by night. And then the Gemara started, but the Gemara did open up a whole question. Well, why is that so? Maybe the mitzvah of Sukkah is also only during the day. But Sukkot Teshu Shivat Yamim, maybe it's Yamim V'lo Leilot. How do you it's Yom V'layla? And the Gemara was trying to darshan back and forth, like, what's the source for the idea that we're going to take the lulav only by day and not at night? Ha Rishon, right? Ha Rishon versus the mitzvah of Sukkah, which is going to be learned and derived as both Yamim V'leilot. And we saw in the end that the Gemara concluded at the bottom of Mem Gimel and Alf to the top of Mem Gimel and Bet was the idea that the comparison was to the world of the Zayin Yemei HaMilui, in the 7 days of inauguration of the Kohanim in Parshat Tzav, where they were told, don't leave the precincts of the Ol Moed for a total of 7 days. So by day they couldn't leave, but at night they could leave. No, it means 7 days total. So the Gemara drew a parallel there and ultimately said, and we had talked about many times, years ago. Actually, I think it was like maybe in my Sukkah on that first Sukkot 3.5, 4 years ago, whenever it was. You could think, if whoever was with us then, that there are many parallels between Sukkah and Mishkan. Right, the height of the sukkah, the chalshim shamayim ala sukkah, the notion that you're right that it's compared to the Aron Kodesh, the idea of the kruvim, the notion of the sakota, the covering over schach lashon covering over, and the kruvim are engaged. They're covering over the aron, right? We talked about this sort of hovering over. We saw a lot of parallels. This was another parallel. The dwelling in the space of the sukkah, day and night, is somehow learned and connected to, that was last week we saw, the world of the Mishkan and the Zayin Mehamiluim. That's what we saw in the Gemara. We didn't see that last year that we learned, because last year we did that Ritva about Tosfot and the Ritva about calendars. But now we're picking up, so just sailing along in the Gemara. Hopefully we'll see a Tosfot or two tonight as well, if there's time. So we're on Mem Gimel Amud Bet, 43b, 3 lines from the top. Arava Shiva Ketzad. What is the 7 days of Arava? So that was a quote, of course, in the Mishnah. The Mishnah is on 42b, the beginning of the parak. So if you flip back, you have to hold your finger, go back one page. We always look, right? The beginning of the parak was Lulav va'arava, Shisha v'shiv'ah. Lulav and Arava sometimes is 6 days, sometimes is 7 days. All right. Now, if you scan your eye down, right, to line 3 of the Mishnah, it says, it's line 3 of the Mishnah, last word, Lulav, Shiv'ah, Ketzad. How does it fall out that 7 days of Lulav? If the Yom Tov Harishon Shachag Shechaliyot B'Shabbat, Lulav Shiv'ah. If the first day of Sukkot is a Shabbat, so then we do it all 7 days. Ushar Kol Yom, but if Shabbat falls out on any of the other days of Sukkot, Shisha, we'd only take it 6 days and not 7. This means in the Mikdash, by the way, in the Mikdash. Then the Gemara said, Arava Shiva Ketzad, and that's what we're up to now in our Gemara. So 7 days of Arava, how could that happen? And the Mishnah says, Yom HaShvi'i Shel Arava. If the 7th day of Arava, and I remind you again, not what we do today, not what we do, where we take the Arava just on Hoshana Rabbah, the 7th day, but back in the day, and forward in the day, in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, the mitzvah of Arava is a mitzvah on every day of Sukkot in the Beit HaMikdash, only in the Beit HaMikdash. Has no analog in the Gvulin. And we'll see that that's Gvulin means outside of the Beit HaMikdash, yeah? So the Gemara here says, well, when could you have 7 full days of taking of the Arava? That's if the 7th day falls out on Shabbat, right? If you can't even happen, which the Gemara is going to get to. Don't you worry. Right, it cannot happen. Today it is impossible, based on the way that Hillel Hasheni set up the calendar. We cannot have Hoshana Rabbah fall out on Shabbos. And a lot of things seem to be, what's the word, jerry-rigged to make sure that that doesn't happen. I mean, that's one concern. Another one is about having Yom Kippurim on a Friday, on a Sunday, right? So you want to avoid that. Yeah, so Monday would have to be Saturday. No, for that day. Well, you say it like this. Well, Chazal use the expression, Lo Adu Rosh, Aleph, Dalid, Vav. Rosh, the first day of Rosh Hashanah cannot be a Sunday, a Wednesday, or a Friday. If any of those would happen, then we would be in trouble, because it would work out that either Yom Kippur would be a Friday or a Sunday, or Hoshana Rabbah would fall out on Shabbos. So the Gemara, the Mishnah rather, tells us, whereas for Lulav, if the first day of Sukkot is Shabbat, we're going to take the Lulav in the Mikdash on the first day in the Beit HaMikdash. For Arava, if the 7th day Shabbos, then we're going to take it. Then Shakol Yamim Shisha. Sorry, Arava Shiva Ketzad Yom Hashvi Shel Arava Shechal Yot B'Shabbat Arava Shiva Ushakol Yamim Shisha. If you, but on the other, and if Shabbos falls out any of the other days of Sukkot, not the 7th day, so we will not take the Arava on that day. So in other words, on a year when, and this is going to be part of the discussion of the Gemara because it's kind of strange, on a year where the first day of Sukkot is Shabbos, we'll take the Lulav, but not the Arava. On a year where the 4th day of Sukkot is Shabbos, we will not take the Lulav or the Arava. On a year where the last day of Sukkot is Shabbos, Hoshana Rabbah, again, as Art Handley pointed out, can't happen today. But if that were to happen, if that was the configuration, and there apparently was a time where it could be the configuration, that's what we're talking about it. If the 7th day is Shabbos, there would be Arava and no Lulav in the Mikdash. The Gemara begins its discussion on Mem Gimel Amud Bet as follows. Arava b'shvi, my time adachia Shabbat. Why should it be that the Arava should davka be docha Shabbat when it falls out if it's Shabbos the 7th day? Why the 7th day? Why not the first day? Why not another day? Why the 7th day specifically? So you'll answer me, I'll answer myself, because Hoshana Rabbah, the day of Din. That's not what's being discussed here. Okay? We take it only on Hoshana Rabbah. We'll see why further along, but we do it essentially Zeichel Mikdash. We'll see there's another layer to it as well, which had to do with the nature of Hoshana Rabbah, that we're trying to be mazkir in our Zeichel Mikdash of taking the Arava Davka only on Hoshana Rabbah, which for us can never be on Shabbos. But the Gemara doesn't know from that. The Gemara is asking prior to that, Arava B'Shvi my Taima Dachia Shabbat. Why is it that on that seventh day it can push off Shabbat? Look at the second line of Rashi on Mem Gimel Amud Bet. My time at Doche v'lo gazur ba ki hechi de gazur belulav. Why isn't there a gzeira on the seventh day of Sukkot with regard to Arava as you have with regard to the lulav? Daha hachanami leita min haTorah bigvulin kishar yemei hachag. Right, legabe lulav. Remember we said that in the other days of Sukkot there's no mitzvah to take the lulav in the gvulin. Right? The mitzvah of lulav is only minatorah, only 7 days in the Beit HaMikdash. So that's what the Gemara had said previously, we knew that to be true. Therefore, if Chol HaMoed is a Shabbos Chol HaMoed, or Shabbos is the last day of Sukkot, or let me say it more clearly, if Shabbos is any day other than the first day of Sukkot, so we won't take the lulav. Only if it's the first day. Okay, but Rashi here points out the question of the Gemara is: wait a minute, but there's also the Arava. There's no it doesn't exist minatorah b'gvulin k'shar yemei hachag l'gabe lulav, right? V'amai lo gazer baba mikdash. So why isn't there a gzeira against the use of Arava in the Mikdash on the seventh day, as would be true for the lulav? I'm Rabbi Yochanan. I'm on line number 5 of the Gemara. The beginning of the line, Amar Yochanan, Torah, in order to publicize that Arava is truly min haTorah. Remember, I told you before, it's not mentioned explicitly in the Torah, or at least that's the assumption. And of course, the question is, why do you have to make a pirsum? And also, if you're making a pirsum, you want to publicize it. Why are you publicizing it on the seventh day when you publicize it on the fourth day?
Is he timing that it's only min haTorah on the seventh day? Is he saying it's min haTorah on all 7 days?
The latter. He's timing that all 7 days is min haTorah, but some people want to be mafar saying that's min haTorah when it falls on Shabbos. And the question is, but why? That seems to be very strange. It's strange. That's what we have to understand. So the Gemara says, well, ihachi lulav nami lidchei k'dei lafarsim Moshe min haTorah, right? Well, if that's true, so you should also say it's true for the lulav, that the lulav should push off the mitzvah. The mitzvah of lulav should push off Shabbos to show that it's from min haTorah. But I didn't do that. The Gemara says, no. Lulav gzeira mishum de Rabba. Remember, gzeira de Rabba, so named for Rabba, the concern that he made, a gzeira to counter veil. People will carry it to an expert to learn about it, and they'll carry it. Shema Yavirenu Dal Amad B'Shut HaRabim. Okay, the Gemara says Ihachi Arava Nami Nigzor. Okay, then you should have an gzeira against the Arava as well. Same problem. Yeah. Arava Shluchei Beitin Maitila Lulav Lakol Masur. The difference, says the Gemara, is that the Arava is given over to the emissaries of the Beitin to collect the Aravot, to bring them to the Beit HaMikdash. Lulav was in everybody's house to bring it to the Beit HaMikdash. And therefore, we were concerned that people will keep it in their home and they'll carry it to the Beit HaMikdash on Shabbat, as opposed to the Aravot. Nobody got the Aravot. The Gabbai handily had them in the fridge and took them out, massive bundles. In the olden days, used to go to the house on Enfield, and cut them. The 11 Amma high ones that we're going to see in a few weeks, we're going to get there. Say, oh, we were doing the right thing. Yeah, okay. So with the humongous ones, it's not really the minig for most places. It was here, but not in most places. But then they sold the property, so that went bye-bye. But right, they're all going to be ready from the Gabbai. The Gabbai is going to have them ready, as opposed to the Lulav. Everybody has that in their house. Like that's a little bit strange as well. So we need to pause here for a minute. We need to pause here for a minute with a lot of questions that abound. Let's just see Rashi's rendering of this, so I understand on a deeper level before we delve into it further. Okay, so if you look at the fourth line of Rashi, the last of the wide lines of Rashi at the top, he writes as follows: "Lefarsim Hashim min haTorah." We're trying to announce, we want to proclaim that it's min haTorah. It's not explicitly mentioned in the Torah. So Shav Kula Ravcha Limidche Shabbat Chad Yoma Farsimash Min Torah. So therefore, we threw down an expanse. We wanted to throw in something that would exaggerate, that would show that we're pushing off Shabbat at least one of the days of Sukkot to indicate this Arava business is definitely Min Torah. You're asking yourself, like, what are you going crazy about? There are a lot of times you have to do a mitzvah, we can't do it. Shofar's Min Torah. I'm willing to be docha that if it's Rosh Hashanah Shechal b'Shabbat. Lulav, that's what we do. So this you can't leave it alone. Couldn't leave it alone. We got to understand why. The Gemara is eventually going to explain that to us, but I know that's murky. It's like it doesn't compute. But something about it's not mefurish and it's not explicit. So Chazal had to find a way to show that they're underscoring. Look how important it is. So the Gemara says, well, remember the Gemara had said, so push the lulav away also. Day one. Why do you allow on the first day of Sukkot is Shabbat? We say, oh, you could take the lulav again in the Mikdash, or we saw a Mishnah that talked about the Beit Knesset. Remember, you bring to shul on Friday and you could take it. You know? So lulav nami nidchu b'shar yami b'Mikdash kidei lefarsimo shemin Torah kol shiva. So why don't you allow lulav to also push off all the other days in the Mikdash? That's not what we had said. We said that other than the first day, on the other days of Sukkot, if Shabbat falls on any day other than the first day of Sukkot, then even in the Mikdash, they didn't take the lulav. But why don't we mefarsim? It's Min Torah. How will we mefarsim it? We'll say, oh, it's so strong that it pushes off the problem. Shemi Yavirenu Dalad Amot, just go in the Beit HaMikdash. And they'll do it there, not the Gvulin, but in the Beit HaMikdash. Right? We're talking the theater of operations here is in the Beit HaMikdash itself. Mm-hmm. So the Gemara, so Rashi says, Kol Shiva, Daha lo mefarshi behedya, the ikal amitiv ulemeimar, Dahai usmachtem lifnei Hashem shivat yamim, lav simchat lulav ka'amar. I should have turned on the screen to give everyone the pasuk, but hopefully we know the pasuk by heart because we're doing it so many times. So I'm not violating Gemara Git and Daf Samach, right? Ulekachtem lachem bayom harishon pri eitz hadar kapot tmarim vanaf eitz avot ve'arvei nachel. Excuse me. What's the next words? Usmachtem lifnei Hashem Elokeichem shivat yamim, and rejoice before Hashem your God 7 days. Rashi says, everybody knows, every Jew knows, what is Usmachtem Lifnei Hashem? When are you Lifnei Hashem? Chazal tell us this, when you're in the Beit HaMikdash. And what's the Simcha? The Simcha is waving a lulav. Therefore, in the Beit HaMikdash, even though it says, take for yourself on the first day the following 4 species, the fact that the Torah, in that same pasuk, in Parshat Emor, chapter 23, said specifically, take these 4 species on the first day and rejoice 7 days if you're before God. When are you before God? Only in one place, in the Makom HaMikdash. But Rashi says you didn't have to read that. It's also not mefurish in the Torah. It doesn't say, Usmachtem lifnei Hashem b'makom asher yivcha Hashem l'shakein shemo sham, in the place that God will choose to cause his name to dwell therein. It doesn't say, Usmachtem lifnei Hashem be'ohel moed. It says, Usmachtem lifnei Hashem l'keichem. And Rashi points out that even the lulav, there is a good case to be made that the lulav itself is also, the notion that we take it 7 days in the Mikdash is also not so explicit in the Torah. Now, Arava is farther out because there's, according to many, seems to be the Psak, it's halacha Moshe Sinai, it's not in the Torah. We'll see later that there's going to be a machloket about it, like I told you. Spoiler alert. Okay, I'll just tell you now because why hold back? That one of the Chacham is going to say Arvei Nachal is in the plural. Arvei Nachal, I'll tell you there's 2 mitzvahs with the Arava. One is part of the Daled Minim, the other is a separate mitzvah of Arava. The other opinion says, it's halacha Moshe Sinai. Larry, I see your hand. Let me just finish the sentence. I'm coming to you presently. What's the idea? The idea is that Arava, very, very weak connection to the Torah Shebichtav. But even the notion that the lulav is taken 7 days in the Makom HaMikdash is itself not as strong as we think, because it could have used other language that's more explicit, and it didn't. So the Gemara's question is, once you're saying you have to be a farsim that the Arava is Min HaTorah, therefore it should push off the 7th day. Again, why 7th instead of the 4th? We haven't answered, but why should push off any day? Answer to show that it's actually Min HaTorah. So now the question becomes, well, what about lulav? Maybe lulav should be also, in fact, it does, the first day. Lafarsim Hashem Min HaTorah. right? Why is that? Because it's also not all that explicit. Okay, but the question came up, and that's what we saw the flow of the Gemara, right? If the whole point is Torah, it's gonna be Docha Shabbat, even one on the seventh day, so lulav also should push off Shabbos on any day. Torah. Rashi is explaining, what do you mean lulav is not Mina Torah? Of course it's Mina Torah. No. Lachem bayom harishon. Why do you take the lulav on Shabbos in the Mikdash if it's the first day? Because it says in the Torah, Lachem bayom harishon.
Bayom harishon, right? Is because it says it's a
Wait. Oh, you're getting to the key. And that mitzvah, though, is not place dependent. It's in the Mikdash and it's Begvulin.
Right.
But what's the rest of Sukkos in the Welcome to Mikdash? Take the lulav, right? But in the Gvulin, it's not a mitzvah min haTorah to take the lulav anymore. Mikdash, we do it. Just the first day. But what does the Gemara then say? The Gemara here says, well, wait a second. We're worried for lulav about Gzeira D'Rabba. So you're not worried about Gzeira D'Rabba for the Arava? There's a difference. The difference is, and I have to see one more Rashi. Forgive me, Larry, one more second, if I don't see the next Rashi, this is literally completing the sentence, is that there's a chiluk between the lulav, which is in everyone's hand, and the arava, which the shlichim collect, but there's more. Shluchi beitin maitila, me'erev Shabbat, they collect it on Erev Shabbat ulamacharat, and the next day, on Shabbos itself, ein a mitzvah l'chol adam. It's not a mitzvah for every Jew who comes to the Makom Mikdash. Ela Kohanim, Hamakifim Badam Mizbeach. It's only for Kohanim to take the Arava. They take the Arava, and it's not clear what they do with it. Going to be a machloket, but it's something about the Mizbeach. A Yisrael is not allowed to go near the Mizbeach. There's an Isser, right? The Yisraelim can go only in the Ezrat Yisrael, essentially, right? To come into that area. If they're giving a korban, so they do a smicha on it, but they couldn't go up to the Mizbeach. They couldn't go, certainly not between the Mizbeach and the Ulam. There was a space between the Mizbeach and the entranceway to the Heichal. It's called the Ulam. They could not go there. So if it's about making circuits, or even if it's something else, leaning something on the Mizbeach, it's just for Kohanim anyway. And the point, as many other Rishonim point out, and some Achronim, this Rashi is the Kohanim, there's reason mitzvahs. We have some Kohanim Kedoshim with us, so be careful how I speak. But that's what it means. They're going to be reason. They're connected to the Mikdash. They know what to do. It's a limited population. They know one has it in their house. They come to get it from the Shlichei Beitin who have gotten it for them before Shabbos, etc. And they're doing it just like they're doing all the other avodas in the Mikdash. It's not Maser L'chol Adam, says Rashi. It means the Kohanim are the ones doing it. Not just that it means the shlichim are taking it, but also the Kohanim are the only ones actually engaging the mitzvah. You'll ask me, but today on Hoshana Rabbah, everybody takes it? Oh, wait, we got to keep going. Larry, please, I'm sorry to keep waiting so long.
What I'm missing is why the Arava is being singled out in light of the pasuk that explicitly talks about all valid meaning. We may have covered this, but I'm
okay. At the beginning of the shir, I mentioned that this is part of what's confounding about Arava, is that actually the according to the way we essentially paskin in the end, and that's why it's like, what's the sequence of all this? But the end point is that the Gemara already has told us that that the mitzvah of Arava is a halach l'Moshe Misinai. Right. It's not halach l'Moshe Misinai definitionally. It's on page 34a. 34a. If you want to see it, it's there. So and in fact, I even forgot. I'm sorry. We already saw this. 34a, Abashol is the one who says Arve is in plural. One is for the Dalad Minim, one is for the Mikdash, meaning for the mitzvah of Arava. But the Chachamim disagree with Abashol. The Rabbanan say no. Hilchot Gemiri Lahu means it is a halach l'Moshe Misina. Rabbi Asi Am Rabbi Yochanan Eser Natiot Arava. There's on that list. And Ischamayim halach l'Moshe Misina. It's not it's not listed explicitly in the Torah. The mitzvah of lulav is explicit in the Torah.
This discussion then is specifically with respect to the separate bringing of the Aravot by the Kohanim.
Yeah, this is only focused on the Arava, but the compare and contrast is to lulav, because we talked about lulav and arava actually in the same breath at the beginning of the Mishnah. That's the two first words, lulav arava, shisha v'shiva. Could have said lulav shisha v'shiva, arava shisha v'shiva. Put them two of them together, it shows that they're somehow connected. I mean, not just because of the species, but some of the mitzvahs maybe are connected.
When they're saying lulav, are they including the other two other than the Arava?
Other two? What other two?
Hadassim.
No. There's a separate mitzvah called Arava to bring Aravot to the Beit HaMikdash and do something with them.
Only the Kohanim. Was it only? It was only the Kohanim, no?
That's what I just revealed moments before I opened the floor to questions. Yes, is that Rashi wants us to know it could only have been Kohanim because they had to go around or near the Mizbeach, and Yisrael wasn't allowed there anyway.
Forgive this. Is Ed Kaplan in the room?
Yes, Ed is here, and so is Sully.
Please tell Ed that I sent him an email, a text. It's important, otherwise I wouldn't interrupt.
He sent you an email. It's important.
A text.
A text.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I apologize to the phone.
That's a first, by the way. The Zoom to in-person relay right here. Okay. Shkoach, wait, George first, and then Art.
So is there an argument to be made
Please.
that the Lulavim is for everyone, and the Arava is only for Kohanim? How do you link them? It shouldn't necessarily be linked.
Right. Well, that's part of the question. And
But they're trying to link.
okay, but the linkage, according to Abba Shaul, we don't pass on Abba Shaul, he's outvoted by the Rabbanim, which raises another question referencing the whole series we did on Shavuot. Like, is there machloket about what's Halakha Moshe Sinai and what's not? And then Halakha Moshe Sinai means like everybody agrees, Halakha Moshe Sinai. But what is on the list? What's not on the list? How much is it on the list? You know? So there seems to be linkage because the Aravot are the Aravot. We're going to have the question though, maybe the Aravot in your Lulav are doubling up. The Gemara says, no, I'm going to double up. Separate mitzvahs for sure. But there's at least a case to be made, right? Lulav and Arava go together, don't you see? Right at the beginning of the Mishnah, the two words are together, right? And why is that? So Rashi already shows what the linkage is. They're both things that happen in the Beit HaMikdash potentially for all 7 days, or for 6 out of the 7 days. But if you live outside of the Mikdash, the Lulav outside the Mikdash is a 1-day affair, and then it's finished. And Arava is 0 outside the Mikdash. In other words, what links them is they're both associated with the Mikdash for a 7-day period. And what links them is that neither of them is explicit in the Torah. How much is it not explicit in the Torah? A question of degrees, because the Lulav is clearly in the Torah, and the Harava is, as a separate mitzvah, is not in the Torah. It's halacha Moshe Messina. Let's just run with that. But he's outvoted. The Rabbanan say, it's not correct. They made a mistake. But as Rashi pointed out here, even the mitzvah of Lulav in the Beit HaMikdash is not so clear, because the word usmach l'fnei Hashem l'keichem could have meant about something else. The mitzvah of simcha could have been just be joyous. Ein simcha l'basar v'yayin. Simcha is to sing, simcha is to dance, whatever it is. But who said it means taking the lulav? But no. Rashi says, we know that the main drasha is usmachtem l'fnei Hashem l'keichem shivat yamim means that usmachtem. How do you rejoice? With what I said in the beginning of the pasuk, Hashem's telling us these following things. And where are you lifnei Hashem? On the Beis Mikdash. That was only Beis Mikdash. But Rashi says, but you could have made another case. The fact that you could have means Kidei L'Farsim in the Torah. That's what the Gemara is asking. So the Gemara answers, no. There's a difference here. The difference is that Lulav is actually more explicit in the Torah, and it is going to be in everybody's hand. Therefore, you can only allow it on the first day. When is it in everyone's hand? On the first day of Sukkot, as I was saying before to Art. The Mikdash and the Gvulin, everybody takes the Lulav on the first day of Sukkot. After that, not everybody takes it. Only people who are in the Mikdash. But if it falls out on Shabbos, Chazal said, stay your hand, because we're worried that people are going to end up carrying it up to the Mikdash. They come to Yerushalayim, they're staying in the whatever, in the Waldorf, and they're so excited. We're going up, whatever it is, the Mamila over there. They're excited. We're going to the Makom Mikdash. So I'm going to grab my lulav and etcha and I'll walk through the streets of Yerushalayim. And that would be a big problem, because we have a lot of problems over there. Okay. All right. Someone has a question. Ed, no.
Yes.
No. It's Judah. Judah, you want to say he had his hand up. He hasn't spoken yet.
It's lack of Torah education, but he said in the beginning of the Gemara, he said, "K'dei lefarsema shehi min haTorah," correct, Rabbi Yochanan.
Yes, yes.
But we say no. This is a halacha leMoshe Sinai. What is a legal difference between one and the other? Min Torah can understand it's written down.
Okay, right. Okay. So let me give this this is actually an excellent question, a foundational question. It's so important, so important. So the Rambam in his Hakdama Parashah Mishnayot, if you're for further reading, it's accessible online, B'Lashon HaKodesh, in other languages too. He explains this. We have our mitzvot that are min haTorah, that are deoraita. We have those mitzvot that are deoraita, means that they are written or sourced in the text of the Torah itself. We have rabbinic enactments, it's mitzvot derabanan. There's a whole range of types of rabbinic enactments. Those mitzvot are in some way, let's say, derivative, or using the legislative power vested in the Chachamim. Chanukah, Asher Kisham Tov Vitzivanu, Lalik Neshel Chanukah. That's the Gemara Masachet Shabbat. Hechan Tzivanu answers the Gemara when the Torah says in Parashat Shoftim in chapter 17 of Sefer Dvarim, Lo Tasur, don't stray from the words that the Chachamim tell you. That's what it means. They have the legislative power. However, there's another category, and this category is called Halacha LaMoshe Misinai. There is a limited number. Ayin Sham, the Rambam Hakdama LePerush Mishna. You can put it in Google; it'll come right up to the whole text. There's a limited number. It's not 1,000 things. It's 30 something things or thereabout that are not derived from the text of the Torah, and their sole authority is that we say, as a matter of faith, that these are mitzvot that have the status of the oraita, and we know them in one way. They are conveyed to us, ish mipi ish, eid mipi eid, from Moshe Rabbeinu. There are limited numbers of things like this. Tefillin has a lot of different aspects, 8 things about tefillin that are halacha Moshe Misinai. What's the source in the Torah text? There isn't a source. So maybe that makes it around. No, it's a limited number of things. I underscore again. What? It's 30 something. Yeah, it's not 36 maybe. Yeah. I mean, again, like everything else, right? He says like most of them come down to the following. He lists them off. He tells you what they are. But the 8 of them regarding tefillin, that they have to be black, that they have to be square, they have to have the sheen, the 2 sheens. There's all different things. So the kesher, all these different things that are halacha Moshe Sinai, it's its own category. So just to advance it a little bit, farsa min haTorah. At a certain moment in Jewish history, in this particular period that we're learning now, that we're talking about in our sugya, one of the great battlegrounds, or many of the great battlegrounds, I should say, between our way of life and what I would say are reforming sects or other alternative sects that had different interpretations. It didn't mean they were lax about the halacha. They just had a different view of things, which is not to be parv about it. It was kfira. They were kofir in the Torah Sheba'al Peh. They said we don't accept that there's such a thing as an oral tradition. Whatever God said is written in a book. It's physical. It's an object. There's no such thing as an oral tradition. The rabbis just make stuff up. They didn't believe in the Masorah. So the battlegrounds were oftentimes things related to practices that happened in the Beit HaMikdash or things that were halacha Moshe Misinai. So when those things came up, Chazal were extra careful to try to augment and amplify these elements. We saw this in Masechet Yuma, if you remember, in depth. Yeah. We talked about this, about how the Ketoret is prepared. We saw with regard to Nisuch Hamayim, we're going to come to it here in our sugya, but we had it in Yuma as well, with the pouring of the water into the right place or not, and what is there a thing of pouring water or not? This Hamayim, not, yes.
That's the whole concept of Sukkah.
You're right. This Hamayim. Right. So exactly. In the Sukkah Beit HaShoeva, we're going to see it's like all to like stick it to the Baitusim and the Tzdukim, 2 groups that wanted to tear apart the notion of a Masorah, of seeing the Torah as a living, breathing document, means that there is a whole oral tradition that comes with it. They wanted to look at what they call the religion of text. If it's in the book, we accept. If it's not in the book, it's bunk. And that is, to us, a great heresy. That is not something we come close to accepting. So Chachamim were pushing on these points, and therefore Arava, it's not in the Torah, it's Lach Moshe Sinai. We got to make sure it doesn't go by the wayside. We're going to say, I'm sorry.
Well, Halacha Moshe Sinai cannot negate what's written in the Torah. Obviously, it's based.
No,
It's based on the written stuff. It has
well,
to be
no, it is not sourced in the written stuff. But you're
It
right. It's
does-
not going to contradict what's in the written stuff.
It cannot.
Right.
So-
It will not cannot. It will not.
Yeah.
But the truth is, from a halachic perspective, midaoraita, picking up the lulav or picking up the arava on Shabbat is not a violation of Shabbat. You're doing a mitzvah, a biblical mitzvah. The issue becomes more complex when we talk about the realities of Gzeira de Rabba. Rabba came along and said, I just see how people are. It's the reality. They're going to walk in the public domain carrying it, and they'll come to violate Shabbat biblically. And that's not going to be good. And we saw previously on page 42b some of the ways they tried to mitigate it with regard to the lulav. With regard to Arava, there was no need to. The Gemara is saying here, why not? Because it was only the shlichei beitin who would get it erev Shabbat. They're civil servants. They're priestly civil servants, you could say. I don't know if the shlichim were kohanim, by the way. I don't know if that's necessarily true. But the kohanim were the zrizim who took these objects in hand, and they were the ones who used it in the Mikdash on the days of Sukkot, not Yisraelim. It wasn't Masur Lakol. Let me go to Art. He's waiting patiently. Okay, Art, go ahead. There's 3 minutes left. I see on the clock. Can't believe we didn't do any farther. Okay.
That doesn't compute about the Sefer de Rabba. This is not the first time we're seeing it.
We've seen it a number of times. Yeah.
But the Gezerah is because he's worried you're going to carry it because you're not going to know how to do it and you're going to take it to an expert. If that's the worry, it would seem to me that it's exactly the opposite conclusion of what we're drawing. People are only going to want to take it to the expert the first day. Once they get beyond the first day, they already know how to do it.
You would think, right?
If they need to take it to the expert, so therefore it should be canceled on the first day and not on the other days.
Your point is well taken. My understanding of it, which is limited, I grant you, is that number one, people saw how other people were doing it. The reality was that it wasn't like everyone did everything the exact same way. There are different ways of doing not knew him. And a guy starts looking at another guy. Hey, I don't know if I'm doing it right. I go to my Rebbe and ask him how to do it. There was a sense that since how should we say, we're doing the religious thing. Now let's do it better. So a sense that with a connection to the mitzvah, like, oh, wait a minute, I better go to a shir on this. Who's going to teach me? I'll learn practically. That's one aspect. And the second is the very real possibility that perhaps people didn't run the first day all to do it en masse, even though they should have, and they could only get there day 2, day 5. Otherwise, I'm also scratching my head like you. Like on day 6, you didn't figure it out by now. You didn't go on day 2, day 3.
Not only that, in fact, on the first day, it's not canceled. That's the day you should.
Oh, wait. The first day it's not canceled. Correct. But the first is not canceled because we have another countervailing pressure, which is that no matter where you live, you have a chiyuv de oraita to do this mitzvah. And at least at some point in Jewish history, Ayin Sham, page 42b, there was the reality that you could bring it on before Shabbos and leave it there. And that would be good. But the other days, now there's a split between what's going on in the Mikdash and what's going on in the Gvulin. Now you can't really argue that what's going on in the Mikdash is so important that it's going to override Shabbos that people will bring it on a Friday. Because there's already a gap. Anyway, 7:59 to 31 seconds. So how much farther am I going over here? I'll do one more sentence. One more sentence if it's okay. One more sentence and we're stopping. Just look, because I don't want to be late. But after the Gemara had said this and said, well, the shluchei beitin, they're going to take the lulav, but they're going to take the Arava, lulav kol masur. The Gemara says, ihachi kol yomanami lidchei, right? So then, I know, but we still have to walk there and set up. I guess I can't walk in the last seconds, even though sometimes I do. But right, ihachi kol yomanami lidchei, right? If that's true, then why don't you allow people to take since we know that it's only the shlichei beitin, and the shlichei beitin are only going to give it to the kohanim, and it's only in the makom mikdash. So what's the difference? Why are you waiting till the 7th day? Why don't you do it of any of the days of Sukkot? Shabbat is on any of the days of Sukkot, we could say could still do it because the day before, the Erev Shabbat, whatever that Shabbos is going to be. So the day before, you'll tell the Shluchei Beitin, go down and take the Aravas and bring them up. Only the seventh day? Why not any other days? Atu the Pikpuke Belulav. People will come to basically denigrate the lulav. Rashi says zule belulav. Mishum dlo dachi belulav el bechad yoma vaha dachi kol yoma. At remember lulav lav mitzvah chashuvahi. They'll start making a competition. Say mitzvah is not so important. Arava, that's really important because look, they're doing it all 7 days in the Mikdash. But Shabbos takes precedence over the lulav, even in the Makom Mikdash on days 2 through 7. So the Gemara says, okay, v'lit chebiyam tav rishon. So then why did Chazal choose day 7? Why don't Chazal choose day 1 and say, just like lulav, you could take day 1 in the Mikdash if before Shabbos, right? And the people at home are going to keep it at home, right? Why do you say with Arava that's the day that's going to override Shabbos, but not the 7th day? Answers the Gemara, Amri lulav hu dachi, right? They'll end up saying, it won't be clear. They'll say the lulav is pushing off the day, and the Arava came along with it. Kevan the kamafkat la merishon ukma ashvi. So why do you choose for the Arava now? Day 2, day 4, day 7, day 6. Why choose only day 7? So the Gemara actually says there's a certain symmetry. Now that lulav is the star of the show, if you will, on the first day, and that's the day when you can bring it before Shabbos to the Makom Mikdash or whatever. That's what we discussed, because it's a mitzvah to take the lulav in the Mikdash and in the Gvulin, and that's why it's the first day. We don't want to choose stam another day for the Arava. We're going to put the Arava as the last day. The last day, Hoshana Rabbah, the last day, to show there are an opposite polarities. It's sort of like the brackets of the two. That's kind of the idea. Instead of just having it on a random day, and then you put it on the 7th day, like that'll be the day that it's the star. I.e., if that 7th day is Shabbos, there won't be a lulav in the Mikdash, but there will be a Arava. Follow? Okay. All right. Adkan for tonight. Next week, I am not sure if we're on Monday night. We're not going to be learning Monday night. It'll be another night of the week. I don't know if it's Tuesday or Wednesday. Will not be Thursday. It's Tuesday or Wednesday. I will let everybody know. Stay tuned. Thanks for bearing with me. And